This is WPSL Port St. Lucie, the talk of the Treasure Coast.
Election night. That means that I'll be missing my only college basketball game of the year in Bradenton. Don't miss that trip. Good luck, Pioneers, tonight against State College of Florida, the Manatees. IRC now 2-0. A very pleasant good morning to Mr. Michael King in Las Vegas and one Charles Moskowitz in the land of the world champion Sox.
That's it.
That's it. That's all you're going to say?
Nope.
Okay.
No, well, at the end of the football season, I'll, have something to say about that, too.
Yeah, it'll be the end of the football season.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Michael, are you counting the minutes for the 1-7 Oakland Raiders moving to your hometown?
We're all looking forward to it. That's gonna be great.
Oh, it is? Not the way they're playing now. Oh, well, maybe they'll change coaches and have a whole new team.
It's a process building a team, but it's better that they come and improve rather than come at the top and go down.
There you go.
They can only get better.
Exactly. Well, I'll tell you one thing. You guys out there have got a lot to be proud of. That hockey team, it's the best start ever for an expansion team attendance-wise. So
yes.
For folks who said that Las Vegas could never support a in other words, a large schedule, like 40-game home schedule, they are wrong. They're really wrong. So, yeah, it's amazing stuff. But anyway, well, Charles, what am I reading? All sorts of weird stuff on CNBC. I mean, there's some big companies that are just kind of stumbling off a curb here this morning.
Yeah, because everybody expected that, things will continue on exactly the way they have. And frankly, I think the CNBC guys, just like all of the rest of the press, whether it's, TV or written or online, might want to take a look at the difference between two words, possibility and probability. To listen to these guys talk, and of course, this is the most important election in a generation. I mean, come on, give me a break. I understand having to sell newspapers or radio ad time, but there's just so much crap being thrown around. It's just unbelievable.
Yes? Oh, my. Yeah, you're right about that. And let me tell you, there's no crazier place to be right now than Florida. I mean, we have seen and heard it all down here in Florida.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and
you're on the leading edge.
Yeah, we are. Yeah. Well, I was just showing Carol. Apparently, have you heard of DaVita, the big dialysis company? Well, apparently there is a proposition in California, obviously, it's got to be California, that Proposition 8 that would cap all revenues of this company and other dialysis companies in California. They've spent $66 million.
Because they make too much money?
Yeah. So they spent $66 million in advertising to defeat Prop 8.
Right.
I mean, and I'm sure it's all tied to the whole medical for all that Jerry Brown wants. But wow, I've never.
And in California, they also have something. Excuse me. They also have something that bears directly on one of my favorite companies, CTL, CenturyLink. Some kind of weird proposal about internet. What do you call it? The internet is free for all kind of. Yeah.
Oh, access for all?
Yes. Well, I mean,
Really?
they're talking about it from the standpoint of net neutrality. That's
Oh,
what I'm
well, that
thinking
net
about.
neutrality is gone.
Yeah.
That was with the FCC. It's gone. So,
Yeah.
but we know Jerry Brown has been very out front that everyone in the state of California needs to have the web, and they need to have
Right.
the same speed of web, because what they even zeroed in on, the ag areas by Fresno and the whole salad bowl in the center part of the state of California, where the internet is not as strong as it is in the coastal areas. Well, there's probably not as many towers for one. I don't know, but yeah, it's crazy. You can't legislate that stuff. I guess you could try, but
I don't get how these people just don't understand that you cannot just legislate your way. I mean, there's just too many. There's too much money. There's too many special interest groups, and this is not a new conversation. It's been this way for years and years, and certainly since Citizen United. I mean, the amount of money. There's a proposal here about staffing nurses in hospitals. There's one side of it is that they are mandated that a nurse can have no more than X number of patients.
ooh,
And the other side is, they talk about it in two very specific ways. If you, how would you like to get to the hospital and be told that they can't accept you because they have too many patients? Which is, I'm assuming somewhat ludicrous. And the other side, says we need more help, and let's bring some more in. I mean, it started out. The only reason that I'm on a soapbox about it is because they started out about a month ago with all of these ads that were supposedly from a nursing association. It turned out that was not the case. The association was an association of the biggest hospital groups who, jiggered up some BS association and made it look like it was nurses saying, this is what we need. I had some surgery about, a couple of months ago on my spine, and I was at physical therapy about 3 or 4 weeks ago, and it was like a change of shifts, and I was in an elevator with, 9 nurses, and I said, okay, so what's your read on it? Half of them were positive, half of them were negative, and this one girl who sat and listened to everything everyone had to say piped up at the end as the doors were opening and said, the hospital says we should vote yes for it. That's enough for me to vote no. And so, it's really disgraceful, the amount of money that gets thrown at all of these things. Just unbelievable.
yeah, it is. It's amazing, and yeah,
And the sneakiness.
oh yeah. Well, you look at, we have 12 statewide propositions this year in Florida, and it's the old yes means no and no means yes, and
Right, exactly.
Or maybe. I mean, it's
Yeah.
like we can't tell you what the funds are, how much it's going to cost. Wait a minute. I'm not going to sign anything
Right.
like that. That's absurd. I don't know.
Right. Yeah.
It's crazy.
I mean, you know, you see it all the time. I mean, it's just unbelievable. It's really, some of these proposals are written the same way that pollsters write their polls to get specific answers. I mean, you know, it's if you look at a lot of these polls, you'll see that the way that the question is asked put it in, you know, a higher probability of getting a specific answer. You know, it's the old, I know it's not, you know, exactly apropos, but it's the old, you know, question in court, you know, oh, okay, Greg, when did you stop beating your wife?
Yeah, yeah. Well, now, Charles, I presume you and Mike have been voting, you know, since you could.
The dawn of time?
The dawn of time, yeah. The tablets on the mountain. But have you guys ever been called by pollsters? I don't think I have.
I get calls
Sure.
all the time.
Really?
And not only that.
Yeah, oh,
let me
yes,
tell
I've
you
gotten
something.
lots of calls.
Really?
At least
Let me
half
tell
a
you
dozen.
something, Greg. I got
Wow.
a text blast last week. I'm assuming that the only way they got to me was, you know, by grabbing a whole bunch of numbers and addressing. But I got a question about that nursing issue. Question 1: is there anything that we can tell you about question 1? I mean, on my cell phone.
Okay, now the next question there, since you were in a hospital a few months back, did they steal all the HIPAA information for the lobbyists? Oh, jeez.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, God.
Anyway,
This is nuts.
so the market seems to have gotten out of October with it, you know, barely able. And it's like they turned on a switch. You know, as of last day of the month, you know, the market's been stronger. It's actually getting a little bit stronger now. And, of course, there was news. I don't know if you've seen this yet. There was news on Under Armour yesterday.
Oh, no, I missed it.
Actually, after the end of the day.
Uh-huh.
It was a Wall Street, you know what I'm talking about?
No.
Ah, okay. So the Wall Street Journal put out this story, and the bottom line from Under Armour is we've addressed these serious allegations, and that policy is zero tolerance. Our policy is unacceptable and will not be tolerated. This is in answer to the article that said that Under Armour employees used corporate cards after events with athletes in order to go to strip clubs.
Wow. A
Yeah.
strip club. I didn't know people actually did stuff like that.
Athletes do it all the time. And I actually kind of understand it. I mean, you know, but so they're no longer they're Under Armour prohibits expensing strip club visits. So it's not that you can't go, you just can't use your corporate card to pay for it.
That's all right. I used to write that stuff off. You know, what the heck?
And frankly, I think it's a valid write-off.
It's a business
I mean, it's
expense.
You know, athletes are notorious for, you know, making scenes in strip clubs. I can understand that easily. But yeah, so this is, you know, all about their corporate culture, which I just found, you know, who thinks of this stuff?
I don't know. Oh, my goodness. Oh, okay.
Anyway, so as I was saying, the market has been a lot stronger, and there's been kind of a real division of the market between the FANG stocks, which are, Facebook, Apple, Amazon, Netflix, and Google, and they've been just demolished. I mentioned it in my daily note last night. All of these stocks. Apple was the last one to succumb to it, and it was down over 10% in 2 trading days. Back under 200 from over 220. So there was a pretty nice rotation into the energy stocks, and with the interest rates creeping up, not going up massively in a day that scares everyone, but slowly building, where you have a very specific stated policy that we're going to take rates higher. That's kind of helped the financials, because as the yield curve gets steeper, and I don't know if people actually understand what that means. The yield curve is the relationship between the shortest rates and the longest rates. So on the short end, you have Treasury, bills, and really the real cash equivalents. And they pay very little, but they have absolutely no risk. And then you move out from those to the 5-year note, and then the 10-year note, and then the 30-year bonds. And so that is the curve, starting at the end. So if, just to use numbers, if the short end yields 1% and the 2-year yields 1.25%, and the 5-year is 1.5%, and it progresses higher, that is a normal yield curve, and that incentivized the banks to lend money for longer periods of time because they lock in those higher rates. And so, what you have is a business environment where cash is not valued as dramatically, hence the smaller rate for shorter periods of time, and the yields curve up. That's been going on, and so there has been some strength. You basically can't have a strong bull market without participation by the banks and the energy sector, because they are the 2 biggest sectors in the market. And so those have been getting, substantially healthier, and, our trading has, last week in the options-only account, we only made $395, but we also closed the week with $811 in unrealized gains, things that we just hadn't sold yet because the market has become, a little easier for a period of time where, you get one day up big and then the next one day down big, and, where it's not really trending for any period of time, it's a lot more difficult to make money. But it seems to have turned around, and, we're seeing some stronger earnings, and we're seeing some more merger activity where, a stock gets crushed, and all of a sudden somebody who's been looking at it, maybe in the same business or in a closely allied business, say, okay, well, this is cut in half. We'd buy that company for a 25 or 30% premium now while it's down, and you're starting to see a lot of that. I mean, really a lot of that. It's the old situation, like when the energy stocks were really getting hurt, the kind of catchphrase from all of the talking heads is, it's cheaper to drill for oil on the New York Stock Exchange than it is to do it out in the field. Exploration in energy is hit and miss. Somebody whose stock is down, 40%, who has proven reserves, not so much risk.
Oh, by the way, speaking of oil, that's one of the propositions on the state. Are we going to allow for drilling in state waters, yes or no? Or maybe.
What are state waters? Within the 3-mile limit?
I have no idea.
I'm not being sarcastic.
No, I know what you mean. Yeah. Well, I guess so. Yeah.
I mean, are they talking about 12 miles out in the Gulf of Mexico off the west coast, or are they talking about 800 yards out off South Beach?
I'd actually like to see a derrick right there in the harbor in Miami. All right. Of course, then getting back to some of the crazy athletes, they try and climb it probably. But
yeah.
Yeah, that's a very good question, and it was not on that ballot initiative either.
Of course not.
Jeez.
I mean, I recorded a whole bunch of things on the DVR that I specifically have not watched, just so that I'd have something to watch tonight instead of all of the election coverage.
Oh, so the Celtics aren't playing tonight?
No, I don't know. What's tonight? Tuesday? They probably are. I mean, they're a big Tuesday, Thursday
team. Yeah, usually. I don't have
when the Bruins aren't in town.
Yeah, God.
Hi, this is Rick.
Hey, another Bostonian.
Welcome, Rick Schumacher.
Hey, Rick, how you been?
Professor of Biosciences, PBIO.
Hey, Rick, so here's the first question. Are you voting yes or no on question 1, the nurses? And part 2, do you understand what it actually is?
Well, there's good arguments on both sides of that question. And, some look at this as saying, do I want the government stepping in and telling me as a hospital how many people I have to hire and and how many people they're able to see, or do I want to run it myself? And then again, the other argument is, if you leave it up to the organization, are they going to abuse that power? And so it's a tough one.
Yeah.
It's a tough. My wife and I have discussed this a lot lately, and it's odd. It's a question where I drive down the street and it says nurses say vote no on question 1, and then I drive further down the street and it says nurses say vote yes on question 1.
Yeah.
So you don't know, but I heard Charlie Baker, our governor, talk about how he thought about it for several weeks and talked to a lot of people. He said, I'm going to end up voting no because I think it's going to increase the cost of health care a great deal, and it's going to do more hurt than good. And I have to agree with him in that regard. I run a business. I don't want someone telling me how many technologists I have to have or how many salespeople I have to have. I mean, that's a decision that we have to make, and I hope the hospitals make them well.
Okay, I've got one for you, Rick. We were just talking about it before you got on the line. In California, there's a Proposition 8. And have you heard of DaVita, the big dialysis company?
Sure.
California wants to cap the profits of all dialysis companies.
Well, we live I think we live in a capitalist society where we allow the capping of what someone makes or what a group makes is capped by something called competition. So if someone is making too much money or a group is making too much money in our free enterprise system, that means others should get into that business and make less money and cause competition, which keeps the price down. I mean, that's the way it's supposed to work.
So the next step would be Pressure Biosciences is making too much money, and we've got to legislate that.
Correct. And if we're making too much money, that means others are going to get in this business, and they're going to bring us down to reality. Again, that's the way that our free enterprise system works. It's not by legislation. it's by competition.
And frankly, the government has a pretty poor record of making decisions, pro and con, and trying to pick winners, a la Solyndra and others that have been given, an exceptional leg up and turned to nothing. So the government doesn't have a great record in this area.
It doesn't have a great record in the area. I agree with that. There are cases where one needs to have the government step in, and there are many cases where the government steps in and it really doesn't have to or shouldn't, as I think many of us know.
Yeah, well, so what's going on at your company now that we've talked politics for a few minutes? Oh man, it's so shocking. Charles mentioning the nurses, and of course I picked up on that California thing. It's like, wow, seems like lobbyists are running the world.
Well, I heard an ad for the first time today driving in from two nurses in California who said that we had a similar bill and it passed. And we're glad as nurses that it passed because it's giving us more time to spend with our patients. So it was a different, it was the other side of the view. There are many questions. There's two sides to everything, aren't there? And that's why in high school or college debate, it doesn't matter which side you get. You can probably argue for it, whether you personally are for it or not, because there's usually two sides to every story.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Oh,
so Pressure Bio, it's been a while since you gentlemen have had me on. Thank you, and thank you, Mike, for the invite.
You're welcome.
I think it's been several months.
It has.
Yeah, could be three. It could be. I think summer vacations got in the way in August. So we've had a wonderful time. We released our numbers in August. I don't want to go back that far, only to say we had our 10th consecutive quarter of increased revenue, quarter over previous year quarter. We attended two food meetings where our technology is starting to be used and certainly being looked at in research labs in the area to make safer food. As you gentlemen know, one of the people on my staff who's been with me from the beginning, Dr. Edmund Ting, is a pioneer in using high pressure to make food safer. And now it's, believe it or not, a $20 billion market. 20 years ago it didn't exist. And many people are eating food that has no additives, no chemicals added, no preservatives, all because it was put under extremely high pressure for a short period of time, and that pressure killed the bacteria, the bad stuff, the foodborne illness bacteria, and made it safer so they didn't. The manufacturers didn't have to put in any additives, which is tremendous. It's called clean label. Well, we have a new process, guys, that we talked briefly about in the past called ultra shear technology. It also uses high pressure, but we added something. We added a special valve that we filed a patent on, and the patents have been approved in China and are starting to be marched their way through Europe and the U.S. and Canada. And what it does is it uses high pressure combined with what we call high shear or high tearing. The high pressure and the high shear together make 1 + 1 = 5, we believe, or maybe even 10. And what it does is it enables us to take material that normally doesn't mix with other material, liquid like vinegar and oil, water and oil. We know oil and water don't mix. Well, if we put them through our ultra shear with high pressure and high shear or cutting, we actually get them to mix in a very economically scalable way, and it's pretty awesome when you see your oil and water go into one solution and it doesn't come out. It's called a nano emulsion. If you can cut the oil droplets down to a very tiny particle, very small, what we call nanoparticles, they actually will not reflect light, and the light will go right through, and it'll look clear. And yet you've got oil droplets still in there, but they seem to be dissolved in the water. Why is it important? because the body is 70 or 80% water, and the more water soluble something is, the better it's going to be getting in your body, being absorbed by your body, being available, what we call bioavailable. So if you have something that is not water soluble, very little of it usually gets into your bloodstream, gets into the body. And if you have something that is water soluble, then you have a much better chance to have a vast majority of it getting into your body. So we've started working, and in fact, we put out a press release just a month ago, 3-4 weeks ago, saying we have decided to accelerate the development of our UltraShear technology platform. And although I'm a small company of about 14 people, I took 5 people away from what they were doing and put them on UltraShear for the last 2 months to accelerate this technology.
So Rick Schumacher's new math, 1 and 1 is 5 from Pressure Bioscience. That's wild. That's mind-boggling, as a matter of fact. That could change the entire food industry.
Well, it goes past food. In fact, the old saying, you should look at the so-called low-hanging fruit, right? And you might ask, where's the low-hanging fruit in UltraShear? And food is clearly a market for UltraShear. Cosmetics is a market. Pharmaceuticals, nutraceuticals, lubricants, anywhere where you have oil and water. I think I've mentioned this maybe before. Raspberry vinaigrette. What do? You shake it like crazy because it doesn't mix, and then you throw it on your salad. Well, what if you put it through a process that turned it into one solution so that it sat in the refrigerator, you took it out, and you poured it on, and that wonderful dressing was all one solution because you made them go together. You made them into a so-called nano emulsion. That's what we can do. But the low-hanging fruit here, guys, in our opinion, is in the area of CBD or cannabinoids. So it's in the area of cannabis. And, cannabis is right now broken into 2 major areas. You've got the THC area, which is the compound in cannabis that is psychoactive, that people just, say it's marijuana. Marijuana is a lot more than just THC. Then you have the other side, which is the compounds that are in the cannabis plant that are not psychoactive. They will not get you high. But they seem to have, if you go on the internet, just tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people saying anti-inflammatory, anti-pain, anti-cancer, that these cannabinoids, led by CBD, seem to have some very, very interesting positive effects. In fact, so much so that GW Pharma in the last few weeks has had the first licensed drug by the FDA using a cannabinoid, and it's for juvenile epileptic seizures, where this compound can do what no drug has been able to do in a certain number of people, which is to stop these seizures. And so GW Pharma was approved. So we've got a cannabinoid drug, a cannabis drug on the market, and again, doesn't have any psychoactive effect, but it certainly has some amazing effect on stopping epileptic seizures. But it goes further than that. Now we have so many people talking about so many other positive effects. So CBD is kind of the rage of the times right now. The problem is CBD comes out of the cannabis plant as an oil, and when you take it, you get very little of it. One of my brothers, who has had chronic back problems since high school football, said, "Rick, I tried it and it had no effect." Well, it may have had no effect because you just like taking a painkiller. You might take a 200 milligram capsule. Someone else might take 200. Somebody else might take 3, and I know somebody that takes 4. Well, your body needs a certain amount of the compound. So maybe he didn't get enough. Maybe he took this, and of course it's not water soluble, so he didn't absorb a lot of it. We think we can change that, guys. We think we can change it through UltraShear. We think we can take CBD oil and make it water soluble. without adding a ton of different chemicals that you don't want to put into your body through our Ultra Shear, by putting it under high pressure and then through a shearing device, a patented valve we have, cutting the oil droplets down that contain the CBD to very small, what we call nanoparticles, goes into solution, becomes clear, and when you take it, it should be absorbed and give you 5, 7, maybe times more CBD going into your body than you get by just putting the oil under your tongue.
Wow, that's amazing.
Wow, that's impressive.
Yeah, when will the FDA okay Ultra Shear?
Well, we won't need any approval for Ultra Shear because if we're in food industry, we will, but we won't need it in the CBD because that's one area where the government has not done any major regulation. And so it's very interesting. You guys were talking early on about regulation. There's state regulations, California, of course, Massachusetts. The voters a year ago voted to legalize marijuana for recreational use, and yet still we don't have it. It's still being developed. Many states haven't approved it at all. So, but that's THC. We're talking CBD. We're talking a compound that has absolutely no effect on getting people high, none whatsoever. And it just happens to come from a plant that has been designated as a drug that needs to be controlled. So it's an interesting issue going on where you want to take CBD, but it's coming from the same plant that gives you THC.
Yeah, but frankly, looking at it, the number of drugs that were a problem that have been repurposed is really astounding. I mean, who would have thought that there'd be a positive and by choice, so cosmetic use for Botox, the botulinum, problem.
Mm-hmm.
So, here, they had to fight botulism, and here we're turning it around and having it shot into your forehead, not only for the cosmetic side, but now the big push seems to be into migraine headaches. The thing that amazes me is how well developed the research has become pretty much overnight in the different uses for the CBD and for the THC side. This is good to put you to sleep. This is good for anti-anxiety. I mean, the number of uses and the amount of stuff that has come out. I mean, I can't imagine that it's, just in its infancy. Moving forward.
It is in its infancy, and Charlie, what I'm amazed at is there's been very little science. There hasn't been enough. I'm a scientist. My team are I'm astounded at the abilities of some of the people that work with me now. They're just so smart and all, and there's so much to be learned. CBD is a cannabinoid, and there's over 100 of these compounds in the cannabis plant. You have two cannabis plants. You have the marijuana plant, and you have hemp. Hemp has been used for 4,000 years for so many things, and yet everyone is afraid to use hemp because it's part of the cannabis family. So what? It contains the cannabinoids. The cannabinoids are being shown over and over and over again by so many people to have some wonderful positive effects, some bonus effects. We're not just talking about getting rid of headaches, we're talking about people that have had major problems with pain and major problems with arthritis and major problems with anxiety. And this is a naturally occurring compound in a plant that by what you read, it's one thing if 10 people said this, but when you read hundreds of thousands of people that are going online and saying, this has helped me, you have to think there's some truth to that. And so here we have...
The onus, I think, really was the fact that while that was all true and has been true the whole time, until we've had this public perception change and the governing bodies. I mean, as good as it might have been, it was until recently, and still is in many places, illegal to even grow that plant.
Correct.
That makes it a little tougher, or did make it a little tougher. And what I find interesting is that the issue here in Massachusetts, the way that it is portrayed in most of the news and investigative reports, is from the legal side relative to operating a motor vehicle or a boat, or at what point is the use of THC equal to 0.30 for alcohol to not be having it be appropriate to be driving a car or a boat.
So Charlie, you're talking about something that obviously is a topic that needs to be discussed. What I'm talking about is something that should be a lot even easier to be discussed. You're talking about THC, and there's a lot of questions about THC that need to be answered so that everything's done safely. But we're not talking about THC at Pressure Bio. We're talking about the CBD and the CBG and the other cannabinoids that are not psychoactive. We're talking about compounds that are naturally occurring in a plant that are giving people thousands, tens of thousands of people, some very positive beneficial effects. And here's the issue. The issue is that those compounds, those cannabinoids, and I'll just specifically talk about CBD because that's the one that's gotten most notoriety. That's the one that a lot of people, that's very available in the market. But it comes in an oil because when you extract it from a plant, the CBD compound is in an oil. What we have at Pressure Bio is we're working on, and that was the brunt of our press release on October 3rd, we're working on Ultra Shear. We're speeding up the development of this instrument because we believe that this instrument has the ability to take that oil, break it into tiny little particles so that the CBD inside the oil is going to be absorbed. It becomes water soluble, goes into your system, into your blood system. So we're not dealing, luckily we don't have to deal with the issues of 0.3 and how much should you take. We're talking about a compound that is not psychoactive, and we want to take Ultra Shear, and we think we're very close, by the way. We want to finish the development of this instrument, which we just started 3 months ago. To build this instrument from start to finish in 3 months is a Herculean task. But I put 5 people on it, which is almost half my company. They're very smart. We're working around the clock. We have meetings all day Saturday, all day Sunday. And because we think we've got an answer that can help, we think we have a method that can make true water-soluble CBD. You can look it on the market, and some people are advertising now water-soluble CBD, but you got to ask them how are they making it water-soluble, and more on that later. Not today, gentlemen, but it scares me on what some people are doing to make it so-called water-soluble. We want to do it the right way, which is to basically break the oil down to tiny nano droplets, make it a nano-emulsion, and that nano-emulsion, without the use of a lot of chemicals, will be able to go into the body and give you much better activity or availability of the CBD.
Hey,
So
Rick, how large is that?
On this,
Whoops.
One second.
Go ahead.
When you're working on this, do you actually have to take the plant and take it apart, or do you get the oil from some source so that you have it to work with, but you're not doing all of that other work?
It's the latter, because if it were the former, we'd have to have all kinds of permits in this state.
Yeah, that's kind of what I thought. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the latter.
Okay,
We're able, as you can pick up go on the internet and buy hemp oil. You can, in many states, you can buy CBD oil already processed, and they'll ship it into the state, and then we can use that. We're not able to grow it. No.
Right.
Rick, how large a piece
lot
of equipment is your Ultra Shear?
How big, you said?
Yeah.
So we're building two systems. The first one is a benchtop. It's a very good question. The benchtop model will be able to generate what we believe will be a decent volume, small milliliter volume of CBD oil and water mixture. If we'll also have the ability down the road to build a floor model. So if somebody wanted to put CBD into a soft drink, for instance, obviously it has to be water soluble. You don't want to put it in there and just have it precipitate out. So you need to have a machine that can generate, liters of material in a period of time, not just milliliters of material. So here's the interesting thing about Ultra Shear. Ultra Shear, our method, is very scalable. We've developed two ways to make it scalable. Both we filed patents on, and both patents we believe will be issued throughout the world. Already been issued, both of them in China, and we have good indication that in the U.S. and Europe they'll be issued. These are parts of the Ultra Shear technology platform that will allow us to very easily scale it, so that if we wanted to work with someone that had a soft drink or a juice, we could scale it in a method. We believe that we could get to the point where we could supply enough material. Again, the questions of where you do it, how you do it. We're talking. I was in Toronto just a few weeks ago, talking to some CBD companies, and it may be that we need to set up. If someone's interested, set up the plant first in Canada, make it very, very easy to do. But eventually, my guess is that the U.S. is going to follow suit. It's inevitable, in my opinion, at least in the area of cannabinoids, CBD and the other non-psychoactive cannabinoids.
This sounds like that would be perfect for a sports drink.
Yeah, that's kind of where I was going with it. Let me ask you something. Does the CBD, is it more soluble, for example, in alcohol than it is in water? Because
yes.
I've noticed, one of the biggest investments in this area is the investment of almost $4 billion in CGC, Canopy Growth, which is, seemingly the class, if there is one, in that group, by Constellation Brands. And so there are lots of things that dissolve more readily in alcohol than, in water. So I was curious about that.
But the concern, yes, it does. But the concern we all have to have as consumers is, how is the company going to make it soluble in non-alcohol drinks? How are they going to make it soluble in sports drinks? How are they going to make it soluble in juices, in sodas? And also, how are they going to make it soluble in edibles? I mean, again, if you're putting the CBD is in an oil and you cook it and you put it into an edible, are you really going to get the value? Are you really going to get enough of the compound? And the quick answer is no.
It's the same argument. It's the same argument in that than it was originally when you said different strengths for different people, and the difference between taking a 200 milligram ibuprofen and an 800 milligram ibuprofen.
But what if you take? Well, what if you the problem was you were only getting 20 milligrams of that 200 milligram ibuprofen?
Right.
And that could be the problem. The issue here is that the vast majority of CBD available on the market today is in an oil, and oil and water don't mix. Oil does not get ingested very well, and the amount of bioavailability of that CBD in the oil is going to be, or other cannabinoids, is going to be very small. You need to have a mechanism of intaking that CBD so that it gets absorbed by the body. The best way to do that, short of putting it in alcohol, the best way of doing that is to make it water soluble, and make it water soluble in a way that doesn't add a lot of other junk that you really don't want to be putting into your body.
Right.
So that's our goal. Our goal is to get Ultra Shear technology from where it might have taken us a year to get to a point where we want to be at in the next, in the next few weeks. We've been working very hard at this. We think we have a wonderful opportunity for our shareholders. We think we have a wonderful opportunity for mankind, to be quite frank with you,
Right.
because there is a rush of people that want to try CBD and the cannabinoids that it seems to have a positive effect on a lot of people. Well, let's at least try to make it so that it can be absorbed by the people that are using it, and so people don't give up on it, because frankly they're not really getting much of it.
Okay, Rick, I have one last question before we're going to run out of time here. Going back to your other business, the breaking down of the cells through pressure, do you do any work in that vis-a-vis cancer?
Oh, of course.
Okay.
Yes, we have a number of. Remember, we are the world's leader in selling an instrument that uses high pressure to break open tissues and cells to get to the good stuff inside. So we have a number of cancer institutes in the U.S. that are using our system, and we have a number of cancer institutes and cancer scientists, research scientists around the world. We have over 300 systems placed in over 200 centers around the world, and we haven't given up. I want to make it clear. That's our core business. We're very excited about it because we believe that we're helping people, scientists, get to answers, to solutions, to cures that faster than they would normally. It's just that we have an ability here to use a sister machine to that machine and have it, we believe, make CBD much more bioavailable.
Well, Rick, you are always a wealth of information. Your stock symbol, please.
PBIO, Pressure Bio, PBIO.
All right. Well, thank you so much for being with us, Charles, Mike. I probably won't be talking with you for the next month, but Cliff will, Veronica will, and Money Info continues to roll on right here on WPSL Port St. Lucie, WPSL.com, webcaster to the world, WPSL on Alexa, and WPSL on Google Home.